Creative Life Survival Guide, where I share survival tips on creativity, productivity, and balancing a creative life. I'm your host, Laura. Hey creatives, if you're like me and you want to start a podcast, but don't necessarily have all the time in the world to dedicate to adding music or editing, Anchor does all of this for you. It's a super easy app to use, and it distributes your podcast as well. So you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and whatever other podcast app you might be listening to now, and you don't have to do any of the work. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey creatives, welcome into today's episode. I'm going to talk about how to prepare for a full-time creative life. Now, what's really awesome is today is actually my first day as a full-time creator. So I put in my 2 weeks a couple weeks ago, and I'm starting my full-time creative life. And I've kind of been preparing for this for a really long time. You know, there's a lot of factors that kind of built up over the last few months that made this the right time for me to switch over. And it's a little bit misleading because I've actually been preparing for this for over a year. It's something that I've always wanted, and it kind of means that I've been ready to dive into the full-time creative life for some time. And so I wanted to, set myself up for success and be ready for when that time did finally come, and that is now. And so basic tips kind of involve, building up savings, building up a client list, and maybe a lot of other material that requires a lot of time. And though these are really important, I kind of wanted to go deeper in this podcast. I want to get into the nitty gritty of the things that you should be prepared for that'll help you succeed beyond that safety net. So here are some really cool ways that you can prepare for your full-time creative life and build it into your current schedule right now if you are creating part-time and preparing for that full-time creative life. So the first big overarching tip is to practice the habits that you're going to need for success. So when you want a full-time creative life, you have to be prepared for the immediate life change that you're going to experience. So today is my very first day experiencing that change. And so I've been practicing habits that are going to help me succeed in this creative life. And the first one is saving money. So it's a great habit for anyone, but particularly important for someone who is going to be a full-time creator. Your income is going to vary, and you have to be prepared for smaller paydays. So practice by saving money and be smarter about groceries, bring in fewer purchases, maybe no Amazon binge purchases. You might need to make coffee instead of buying it. Maybe look into practicing minimalism, or, just create a simple budget for yourself and practice saving some of that money. And you can also save money by selling things that you maybe no longer use, and you can put that money away for emergencies. So pretend as if you don't have it just in case, something arises. And another way to practice habits is practice the habit of creating. So as a writer, I'm going to use that as my example here. When you have a full-time job, it can be tough to get your work in. You need to practice what it's going to be like when you're suddenly doing this all the time. So you're moving from a part-time creative life to a full-time creative life. So you have to understand what it's going to take when your hobby that was, just 5 hours a week or whatever it was, it's now going to be a 24/7 thing. So take a weekend and practice what it would be like to, for me, write all day, study your habits, understand your distractions, and try to prepare for that. Know what your triggers are and find ways to work through them now so that when you do reach that point of creating full time, you know what your habits are, you know what your distractions are, and you can prepare yourself to handle those when they do come up. And finally, in the habit building is build a schedule. Practice scheduling, understand what your current day is, and maybe outline what your ideal day is going to look like. Is that ideal day going to suffice for your creative goals? Are you going to reach your targets with that sort of production schedule? Try out different productivity schedules, use time blocking, Pomodoro, understand how you work best and build a schedule to achieve that ideal balance. The second tip that I have for you is to ask others who do it. One of the biggest challenges in my perspective was, asking other people who chose to create full time. Not only are you reading all of their blogs, actually reach out to them, contact them on email, on their contact pages. Some people will not respond, but I've actually gotten a few that have given me really helpful tips and encouragement along the way. It's also really helpful to join groups. So think about Facebook groups, think about even local community groups. Luckily, I was in a writing group before the pandemic happened, and so we were able to still connect virtually, but being around other like-minded creators or people who are going through the same struggles, it just really helps us work together and solve problems and kind of be a sounding board for other people who are facing similar challenges. And doing this, increases your own knowledge. So you can't prepare for everything, but you can inform yourself and know the big things to be ready for, to be prepared for. And what works for other people might not work for you. So the earlier that you reach out and talk to these people or, get these ideas, the more you can kind of practice them beforehand. Then, if you just figure things out on the fly and try to, implement them as you go, you're going to struggle with success. You're going to have a longer path to that success. My third tip is know the marketing details. When you're entering in a creative life, you have to understand the other factors that you're going to be responsible for. So when you're a full-time creator, it doesn't mean you're creating constantly. It means you create for a period of time and then you go on social media to promote your work. You work on a different project, you work on your finances, you interact with people, fans, readers, and you act as your own marketing department, sales department, financial department, and even management. As a full-time creator, you wear more hats than just being a creator. So use the time prior to your full-time creative life to prepare for these new skills, learn through others, look into courses, there's YouTube tutorials, and, study other learning materials. And you don't necessarily have to be a guru at all of these things, but having a basic understanding of how to run your personal business, how to run your creative life is really helpful. My biggest thing is, though I was a marketer before entering this creative life, and so I do have that skill, building my search engine optimization was one of the top skills that I tried to refine, because you can do a lot with that alone. It does take some time to get the hang of it. And so, building your own personal website now is probably your best bet and kind of getting your work out there to begin with, so you do have an audience to land with. My next tip is to establish realistic schedules. So I know we were talking about building a habit of scheduling, but now we have to understand what we're actually going to be scheduling. So as a part-time creator, you might not have had any deadlines. You might have just done things at your own pace, knowing that you're not working full-time. You're not going to be creating as much as you possibly can. And as a full-time creator, you're forced to build deadlines for your work, specifically if you plan to make money on your creative work. It can kind of be tough to understand what's realistic for you because you don't know what it's like to do this creative habit full-time. And so I'm used to the part-time scheduling of deadlines and project milestones. So it was a bit of a challenge to kind of understand what I'm capable of doing. And it's going to be interesting. I've made deadlines. I've made certain scheduling habits that I know will change. And I'm not going to, go crazy. It's not realistic for me to say that a brand new novel idea is going to be written next week. But, I also don't want to get 4 months down the road and only be on page 10. So, I'm trying to work on realistic schedules, understanding that they will change. So, I'm used to creating part-time. So what I think might take, 2 months to complete might just take, 3 or 4 weeks. So being able to be flexible with that, I might expect to be half done with a novel in a month, but, I might reach that point and actually be a lot further. Or, maybe the novel took off in a different direction and I'm only, a quarter of the way done. There are going to be changes in life, and you have to be able to understand how you work and be flexible with your schedule, but still give yourself deadlines and still give yourself goals and milestones to reach. And my final tip is to just love what you do. I mean, while you're turning your creative endeavor into a full-time money-making thing, we can often lose sight of the whole purpose that we set out to accomplish. I loved writing before I made it my creative career. And now I'm really hoping to, keep that in mind and use this as fuel rather than, lose sight of, my big purpose, my why, when I'm trying to fight to, get some extra cash in my wallet. And so that love can get lost when you realize that what you used to do part-time, what you used to do as an escape, is now your all day, every day. It can get overwhelming. Burnout is real. So make sure you're setting realistic schedules that allow you some space away from your creative hobby as well. So you need to build in those breaks. You need to build in time. You can even pick up a new hobby that you solely keep for fun. I like to paint. I like to help my husband with rocketry. He's been on earlier podcasts. And there are different things that I do and different variations of projects that I do that help keep me kind of engaged in the creative life, but still not feeling that burnout. So I put myself in different environments and I give myself permission to relax. So I hope that you guys can get some really useful tips out of this as I start my creative life full time. I kind of hope to give you a better look at, kind of the ups and downs of what's, happening. I hope to tell you, hey, these tips really worked. And, I really found that this one benefited more than another. And so I'm really excited for this adventure. I hope that you guys can, keep creating and kind of follow your passions as well and cultivate those enjoyments in your life. So you can actually still follow my creative journey. I will continue to podcast here. You can also join my community on Patreon. So I'm giving away my first novel for free, Soul Forgotten, and you can read along for free, but you can also join the community and kind of get an inside look at what went into the making of the novel. So I can, give you inside looks into the chapters. You can get some inside looks into the characters, but I'm also going to give away a lot of free stuff. So take a look at that over on patreon.com/Laura Winter. And you can also still follow my creative journey here and as well on my blog at laura-winter.com. So I'll see you guys next week. This is the Creative Life Survival Guide. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Creative Life Survival Guide. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast wherever you choose to listen. To find more information or survival tips for your creative life, head to laura-winter.com.